Hi everyone, this is Sonia and I'm going to be taking over the General Task 1 Daily Writing Clinic. So this month we're going to be focusing on translating letters backwards and forwards between formal and informal. So today, for example, we're going to be looking at translating a letter from a formal style, which I'm going to give you, and your job is to change the language and make it informal. And we're not going to do the whole lesson, we're going to do the whole letter, we're going to do just the purpose statement and the first bullet point. And then next lesson we'll finish the letter, and then for the rest of the month we'll do the same thing but changing from informal, letter that I will give you, and you will change it to formal. Okay, so before we start, just a few reminders about the Daily Skills Clinic. So first of all, if you haven't finished the course, go and do that now. Okay, so these Daily Skills Clinic sessions are not mandatory, you don't need to do them, and all the really important information is all in the course. So do that first, that's the most important thing. So secondly, we're going to be doing this in order to revise the information that you've already learnt on the course, and so we can have a practice. And I'm going to be giving global feedback, so I'll give you the task to do, and then I will look at your responses and give global feedback. So when you're going to get this, this will be on a Wednesday next week, and there'll be a link underneath this video for you to click on my global feedback. So why are we giving global feedback? Well, this means that when I look at your responses and give you feedback, you can look at your own work and see what of this applies to you. So this will help you become more aware of your weaknesses, and hopefully, of course, if you're more aware of them, then you can do something to fix them. So just to remind you, this will be global feedback. I won't be giving individual feedback to every response I get. So if you want individual feedback, that's what the correction service is for. So last thing then, I'll give you the task, and then I want you to post your answers directly under the video, and then I'll comment on them next week. So before we start with the task, we're going to have a quick reminder of some of the differences between formal and informal language. So when you're trying to decide whether something's formal or informal, you need to change the tone. And how do you change the tone? Because this is very important for task achievement. You need to think about things like the vocabulary you use, types of modal verbs, types of linking words or cohesive devices, punctuation sometimes, and of course the beginnings and endings of letters. So we're going to have a brief little look at some of these. So first of all, vocabulary. Now, I know people say, well, how do you know if vocabulary is formal or informal? Well, if you have a good dictionary, and I mean just a good dictionary online, they will give you this information if it's a word which is very formal or informal. Some of the things that come up in the essays I look at, I'm going to go over now, just briefly. Okay, so I've chosen the colour blue for everything formal, because blue's kind of cold and official, and I've got yellow for informal, because it's bright and sunny, so I'm going to stick to this colour, blue for formal and yellow for informal. So some of the words that come up all the time in students' essays, which shouldn't do, things like informal language, big and huge. For formal language, it depends on the context, but it might be, for example, for a big problem or huge problem, you could say a significance problem. Because it depends, you can't say significant room for a big room, but this is one possible word that you could use. Informal, lots of, a lot of. Formal, many, a number of. Now the word get is generally considered informal. There are a million different meanings for the word get. So for example, I could get a letter, I get tired, get angry. Try to avoid using the word get for formal letters. So it's better to say I received a letter, I felt tired, I became angry. Okay, so usually there's a more formal alternative that you can use instead of using the word get. Now, informal language, phrasal verbs. So multi-part verbs, take off, go out, get up, wake up. These are usually informal. There are a few which are formal, but the vast majority of them are informal. So just only use them for informal letters. And for formal, again, there'll be a different word that you can use with the same meaning. So instead of take off, you can say remove. Or instead of go out, you can say leave. Informal language, idiomatic language, like over the moon, meaning very happy, out of the blue, meaning suddenly. So this is fine for informal letters, but for formal writing, you don't use idiomatic language at all. And finally, contractions. So don't, I've, he'd. Okay, in formal writing, it's a good way to show the examiner that you understand it's an informal letter. And for formal, you have to write it out in full. So do not, I have, he had. Of course, there's a lot more to vocabulary than just these few examples. So this is just a quick reminder for you. On to modal verbs then. More formal, be able to. Because it's kind of neutral, it's not exactly formal, it's not informal. It can be used in a formal sense or an informal sense. But be able to is more formal. Informal, can, could. Formal, ought to. Informal, should. Formal, may. Informal, might. Right, cohesive devices or linking words, linking devices. I'm not going to go all through these with you. Just here are some examples which are formal and informal equivalents and their meanings. So we have ones for addition, result, giving reasons, showing contrast, and giving examples. I'm sure you know many more, so these are just a quick look at some of them. So you can pause the video or take a photograph and have a look, and if you can add some more to them also. Punctuation. Now, some punctuation is okay for formal letters and not informal, and some is okay for informal and not formal. So for example, an exclamation mark, which is this, and a dash, we cannot use in formal writing, but it's fine in informal writing. So here's an example. See you soon. I can't wait. And of course, we have an exclamation mark to show how strong we're feeling, so feeling excited. For formal writing, for informal writing, you cannot use semicolons, and you cannot use colons. This is only for formal writing. I was going to give you an example for formal writing, but I decided not to. Do you know why? Because we don't really use them that often in English. So I'm a little bit afraid if I give you an example of a sentence using semicolons and colons, you're going to start using them in all your formal writing, and then the teacher's going to say to me, Sonia, what have you done? All the students are putting semicolons and colons in every sentence. Really, you can get a Band 9 essay without using semicolons and colons. So I'm putting that information here for information only, but I don't want you to go out and start using semicolons and colons in all your formal writing, so don't do that. And last but not least, of course, the letter beginnings and endings. So for greetings, if you don't know the name, or if you do know the name, of course we only use it with surnames. And informal, hi Jack. Sign off. Okay, I like kind regards because you can use it. It doesn't matter if you know their name or you don't know the name, so that's really nice and convenient. It's easy. Of course, that's not the only possible sign off. And informal, of course, take care, see you soon, write soon. And of course, your name at the end. For formal letters, you need your first name and your surname. And informal letters, just your first name, not your surname. Right, so if there's any information on those things that you're not sure about, look it up on the internet. Look it up on the course. There'll be information about these things on the course, of course. But just semicolons and colons, really don't go there, because most native English speakers don't use them very much, and most probably use them incorrectly as well. So it's not going to be a good idea to start putting them into all your essays. Right then, so here's the task for this week. Now, first of all, here's the situation. You need to borrow $2,500 to buy a car. The task is, this is not your task, I've done this task. Write to the bank manager. In your letter, explain why you need the money. Now in today's task, I'm going to give you this part of the letter that's been written out already, in formal writing of course, because it's to a bank manager, and I want you to translate it into informal language. I don't want you to do anything with these last 2 bullet points. That we're going to do next week. The reason I'm giving you this information now is because it's important when you're writing to make sure you don't include information in one bullet point which belongs to a different bullet point. So when you're writing, just check and make sure all of your information belongs to this bullet point, and you're not going to end up repeating something which belongs here. So let's have a look at my letter. Oh, not yet. Before we do that, of course, we can't have a formal letter is to the bank manager, and we can't have an informal letter to a bank manager. So for the informal task, we have exactly the same situation. The only difference is you're not writing to the bank manager, you're writing a letter to your brother. Now, I know in IELTS, it doesn't usually ask you to write to relatives. It's usually either a non-friend or a friend. It might be a little difficult to ask a friend for $2,500. So I'm going to say you're writing a letter to your brother. It's an informal letter. You get on really well with your brother, so you're close. You're asking him for a third of his money, so I think it's obvious that you're quite close. And the purpose and the bullet points are exactly the same. The only difference is that you're writing to your brother. So now let's look at the first part of the letter that I've done. So here we are, this week's task. So formal to informal, purpose statement, and bullet point 1 only. So dear Sir or Madam, I'm writing this letter in order to request a loan of £2,500. So this is my purpose. I require, first bullet point, explain why you need the money. I require the loan in order to purchase a new car, as I've been having repeated issues in my current vehicle. I've seen a second-hand car for $2,000, which would be suitable. The remaining $500 would be used for insuring the vehicle, which means a total sum of $2,500 would be required. So this is my formal request for a loan of £2,500. Now, I would like you to change this formal letter to the bank manager into an informal letter to your brother. Now, you don't have to try to change every word from formal to informal. It doesn't work like that. But think about some of the things we talked about today for the vocabulary, for the tone, possibly for the modal verbs that you use, and think how you can change it to make it a more conversational, friendly style. And there's something else I wanted to say. What is it? Oh yes, I would like you to keep the same basic information though. So, here it's a loan, it's a new car, issues with current vehicle, second-hand car, this much. Okay, don't change this information. The basic information should stay the same. It's just the language that you're using that I want you to change. Okay, so post your responses for the purpose sentence and the first bullet point under the video. I will check your responses and I will give global feedback next week on Wednesday. Okay, I look forward to your responses. Thanks, bye-bye.